Professor D, and today I'm going to talk about the Intro to Hospitality Orientation midterm exam. I'm going to go over chapters 1 through 8, which are on your midterm, and I'll try to go through it very quickly, so please bear with me. And you can always watch it again. You can always stop, pause, rewind, etc. So chapter 1, know about back of the house. That's the kitchen, that's the chef, that's the cooks, that's a lot of people in the back that make the restaurant run. Okay, empowerment. To empower somebody is to give them authority enough to deal with something. So for instance, you might empower your waiters to allow guests to send dishes back and to replace them at no charge. If you don't empower your staff, what they're going to do is they're going to ask you for permission on everything that happens. Okay? Ethics. It's the idea that there are certain things that are appropriate to do in a particular environment. So the question is it ethical? Is it ethical for a waiter to sit in the manager's office and go through their email? No, not ethical, not appropriate, because there might be some sensitive information in their email. Okay, is it ethical for a staff member at a hotel to go into a guest room without their permission? No. Housekeeper can and will, but they also follow a very specific protocol. You can't just decide to go into a guest room. That's violating their privacy. Okay, so it's not ethical. Front of the house is waiters, barbacks, managers, a number of people when we're talking about a restaurant. There is one role which has more and more responsibility in the front of the house, and that's the chef. Depending on the level of restaurant, that chef is going to spend a lot of time touching tables and speaking with guests, because that's why they're there. Those guests want to interact with the award-winning chef. Okay? Perishability, we're not talking about food. When we talk about perishability within this class, we're talking about services that expire, such as when the plane leaves, you can't sell that seat anymore. When the cruise ship leaves, you can't sell that cabin anymore. When the night is over, once you get to 11, 12 p.m., 12 a.m. rather, the restaurant can't sell those seats or those tables anymore. We're not talking about food. It's important in that same sense that you be able to deal with that perishability. So if you're talking about a restaurant, then you send out an email to your concierges, and they're going to tell you, look, we're sending people over. We're going to help you out, but give me my commission. Okay? So with an airline, you have things like Priceline.com. You have other online options. If you are a restaurant, you can also use OpenTable to get featured on their front page as a 1,000-point reservation. There's a number of things that you can use. So think about that. Pineapple represents, that's a symbol for the hospitality industry. That was on the first page. Know the umbrella diagram, which talks about all the different things that fall within hospitality, some things you may not even realize, such as amusement parks, sporting venues. That's all hospitality. Be familiar with the career ladders. How do you get to become a GM of a hotel or a restaurant? Understand all the different roles that are important. If you're going to tell somebody how to carry plates, you better know how to carry plates yourself. So it's important to start at the bottom and work your way up. Or if you're already here, then do some work on the other side. Pick up a shift every once in a while. Cover people's shifts if you can. Maybe not in your own restaurant, maybe in another restaurant. If you're working at a hotel and you're in housekeeping, then moonlight in another area. See if you can learn the PMS system that you may not necessarily use in housekeeping, but it could be useful to know if you want to make a transition to front desk. So you want to make sure that you cross-train, so to speak. Let's see, 7 deadly sins of service. Go to bottom of page 10 in your textbook, and it goes through those 7 deadly sins. Moments of truth, those are the little things that add up to big things in terms of impressions about a hospitality service. If you go to a restaurant and they seat you next to the bathroom, not a good look. Okay, you're going to remember that. That's a red flag. If you're in the parking lot of a restaurant or a hotel and there's not adequate lighting, you don't feel safe, you're going to remember that. So all those types of little experiences are going to impact your overall experience at that hospitality venue. Yeah, I had a good stay at the hotel, but I didn't feel real safe. Or, oh, that meal was kind of nice, except they put us next to the bathroom and the hostess seemed bothered when we asked for a table. Those little things, doesn't matter how good your food is, it doesn't matter how comfortable your bed is in your hotel, doesn't matter how many channels you have on that TV, it's not going to make up for that, those moments of truth. Okay, etiquette, last thing for chapter 1 to focus on. Etiquette is being polished and knowing the right thing to do at the right time, such as etiquette when you're at the table, etiquette when you are dining with clients, dining with guests. There's a certain polish that you need to have to be successful in this business. Otherwise, you're not going to go very far. And so you have to, observe proper etiquette. And that's also not just sitting at a table, but the way that you treat people. There's a certain etiquette to dealing with, say, VIPs or government officials or royalty that you might encounter depending on where you're working. Chapter 2, Marco Polo was the first noted business traveler. If he was able to earn mileage, this modern concept of mileage or points, he would never have to pay for a ticket ever again because he traveled big time. And he's responsible for opening so many trade routes. It was very, very good for the world because he linked up different cultures. He's also credited with the development of taverns and places where you could stop and sleep and eat. The historic version of what we now know as bed and breakfasts. And there are still taverns out there, but we call them different things. Thomas Cook was did the first group tour in 1841. Consequently, there is the Thomas Cook Travel Agency group in the UK. Unfortunately, they've closed down a lot of locations because the modern travel agency is not as successful or as popular as it used to be. But his name still is on a lot of stores. UNWTO, don't say World Trade Organization, it's the World Tourism Organization. Interdependency is this idea that we all have to work together from a tourism perspective. So when somebody comes to New York City, they may eat in our restaurants, sleep in our hotels, participate in helicopter tours or boat tours or whatever, and we all work together between hotels, restaurants, tours, etc. The concierges send business to the restaurants. The restaurants, when they're asked for recommendations for hotels, send business to the hotels. Or when they ask about what's a good tour to do, you send them to somebody you know. So there's all this interdependency. You depend on each other to be successful. Another type of web and connectiveness is this concept of hub and spoke system on page 35. That's where we talk about airlines. So if you're coming out of a small area in New York City, you might think of Islip, which is a smaller airport, or Newburgh, which is a smaller airport. You will go from Newburgh, fly into LaGuardia, and then go to maybe another smaller airport somewhere in the country. So it's this hub and spoke. So you travel through a hub, which is a bigger area, a bigger airport, where you have a bigger fleet, and all your flights are coming in, and then they're leaving and going to different places. It's a more efficient way of managing your routes if you're trying to get customers from one place. Gas, save on airport fees in terms of what the airline has to pay the airport for the benefit of being there. So that's the hub and spoke system, page 35. Bus travel, be familiar with the different options that we have. We have some of the traditional companies such as Greyhound, Trailways, Peter Pan, etc. Some of the new brands are things like Megabus, Bolt, the Chinatown buses, and then you have some strange hybrids such as YoBus, which is a collaboration between Greyhound and a Chinatown company. So the new ones are undercutting the traditional, more expensive ones, and they're adding benefits such as Wi-Fi, comfort, leather seats, more space, making bus travel a little bit more enjoyable. So we call companies like Megabus and Bolt disruptors, even though they're actually owned by some of the bigger companies like Greyhound and Coach, for instance. Moving on, train travel. Know the benefits, pros and cons between the United States and Europe. One of the big differences is that Europe is like a web. You can go pretty much anywhere on trains. It's kind of the equivalent of the bus here in the United States. The trains in Europe and other places are also subsidized to some extent by the government. And so it's cheaper to travel there. Here, it's very expensive because it's not subsidized. And that means it's a little bit more difficult to get from one place to another. If you're going from Chicago to Miami, you're going to travel through Washington, D.C., which isn't exactly straight. You're basically almost making a 90-degree turn. Car rental industry, you have the Hertz, the Budget, the Avis, etc. And then you have the disruptors, Relay Rides, Car2Go, Zipcar. Those companies are making Hertz, Budget, and other companies think differently about how they operate their business. Hertz has a similar model to Zipcar now, and you should continue to see that shake up a little bit. AAA is, I think it's the American Automobile Association. I forget the sequence of the A's. But in any case, know that this is an entity that helps you if you ever have car trouble. And so if you ever have a flat, they'll come and pick you up and they'll tell you and they'll do all this. You pay between $75 and $100, maybe more per year to be a member. It's basically roadside insurance. It's not car insurance, it's roadside insurance. So that if you get a flat, if you have a fender bender, all these types of things, if you need a jump, if your battery goes dead, you can call AAA and they'll come and get you. And depending on which level of AAA, they'll tell you either closer or farther. Know what a Convention and Visitors Bureau is, what is their role. I'll have you look that up. Multiplier effect, big, 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 very important, okay? The idea is a guest, a visitor comes into your city, they spend $5,000. That $5,000 goes to a hotel, goes to a restaurant, goes to entertainment. They take in the Broadway show. They do some shopping. They go to the Nike store. They go to Pier 1. Who knows? Okay, that money, once they put it into the local economy, then that hotel, that restaurant, Nike Town, all those places, they're then able to pay their staffs. And those staffs then spend the money on groceries and rent and car insurance and whatever locally, maybe not car insurance. So that money spreads and spreads and spreads. It's the multiplier effect, okay? Money comes from the outside, comes into the local economy. Every year we have the New York City Marathon. That's a huge example of the multiplier effect. A lot of money comes in from the New York City Marathon. 45,000 runners. Is it 45,000 runners? It's a lot of runners. But it's also their families, their friends, their supporters. They come in just to support the marathon and the runners that come. Two of the biggest populations are France and Italy. And they roll deep, okay? So, good example of the multiplier effect. Think of how that impacts your particular area where you are. Brick and mortar, that is just a physical structure. Brick and mortar. Mortar glues the bricks together to make a house, to make a building, etc. We talk about brick and mortar travel agencies versus online travel agencies. So you have orbitz.com. Yes, they have a headquarters somewhere, but it's very different than, say, Liberty Travel or Thomas Cook travel. You know, those are brick and mortar installations where they depend on people walking in the door. Orbitz doesn't care if you walk in the door. In fact, they don't tell people their address so people can't walk in the door. They count on people calling or just doing online reservations. Okay, know the difference between brick and mortar and online. Talk about corporate travel managers, just read the book. Travel and tour wholesalers, read the book. Getting the best price on a hotel, look up the price online, find the best price, then call the hotel directly, ask them to match or beat the price. And they will, because they don't want to pay the middleman a commission. Positive, negative effect tourism can have on a country / city / town. This is what we call the carrying capacity. The idea is, and here's an example, New York City, for instance, we have 8 million people that live here between the 5 boroughs. We have 11 million people that are here daily during the week because people come from everywhere to work in New York City. If we were to have the Olympics in New York City, our infrastructure probably would not be able to handle it. Okay, our carrying capacity is probably 11 million. And it's already difficult to go in the subways and to get through the tunnels and over the bridges, et cetera, et cetera. We also, and I'm jumping ahead to chapter 3, but there's this idea of infrastructure. If we have 2 million more people, for instance, can our sanitation support that? Can the pipes, waste? Can our electricity, our source of electricity for the city, can it handle that many people? Because that means more hair dryers going on. That means more people driving to and from. That means our subways are absolutely packed. So there's this idea of carrying capacity. Yes, it's good to have people come in for tourism purposes, and we like that money coming in, but it means more pollution. It means more people on the streets. It means a lot, maybe too much for the city. A good example would be Brazil during the World Cup. Some of those areas where they have the stadiums, they weren't ready for that many people. And so you had people that got hurt. You had people that weren't able to find places to stay and places to eat. And now they're going to host the Olympics. Whoa, see how that goes. Moving on to chapter 3, know the difference between pleasure travel and business travel, i.e. leisure travel versus business travel. Business travel, company's paying for it. But that same person may travel with their family sometimes and with their business sometimes, but they may want to stay at the same kind of place or stay within the same company. Starwood is an example. Okay, you have a lot of different brands under Starwood. You also have a lot of different brands under Hyatt and Marriott, etc. Okay, that's why it's important for hotel companies to be diversified. Okay, and we talk about diversification within this chapter. A brand for every type of customer. You want your budget brands. You want your extended stay. You want your luxury, your trendy, etc. Okay. Know the impact of Airbnb on the hotel industry, and I'll leave it at that. Airbnb is a disruptor. People are choosing to stay in Airbnbs rather than stay in the hotels. Makes total sense. But some people would prefer to be in hotels. Look up Airbnb, search some different places that you might want to visit, and see what the options are. The best way to understand Airbnb. The concept is that you can rent out your place, and you can rent out other people's places. Remember, I'll skip over that. Ecotourism and sustainable tourism, understand what that is. It's pretty thorough in the textbook. But we really need, as a society, global society, we need to do a better job when we travel. A good example is the Galapagos Islands. Tourists are going there, there's no governance or not enough governance, and entire species are being wiped out because tourists are dumb and they're driving down streets too fast and they're running over species, and there's only so many of them left. It used to be a place people went for nature lovers, and now people are just going for a vacation, and that's a problem. It's also, sustainable tourism is also the idea that when you travel, that you're leaving less of a carbon footprint. What are you doing with your waste? What are you doing with how you act when you're on vacation. We already covered carrying capacity, impact of tourism on culture. There's an example that I use once in a while, which is this idea that people visit parts of Africa, and I saw this previously. People visit parts of Africa and they want to see tribes in their natural setting, and they're there and they're cooking and they're making stuff, and they're, you know, they just have lines cloth, and yes, I'm generalizing, I apologize, but they're wearing, you know, nice necklaces that they've made, obviously, and then the tourists leave, and then somebody goes back without, you know, it being planned, and they're there wearing a Nike shirt, and they got Beats headphones on, and, you know, it's the culture. You know, sometimes we play up to the culture, but the culture is being eroded in some places because of tourism. There's a lot of unfortunate examples of where the culture, you go to some places, you don't know where you are. You're in Mexico, but you don't know that you're in Mexico because it looks like everywhere else that you're familiar with. Having gone to St. Martin on the Dutch side, I swear I was at a strip mall because it was so American, it was ridiculous, and nobody speaking Dutch. It was all American this and American that, and they accept dollars, and it was just strange. You go to the French side, it was a little bit more French and not so American, which was appreciated. But this effect on culture is a big issue. Heritage tourism, also in the textbook, and we've already addressed infrastructure. Chapters 4 and 5, we're talking about lodging. Know the different types of lodging, the differences between bed and breakfasts, which are B&Bs, economy budget, extended stay, etc. Hotel franchising, pros and cons. Nice thing if you are a franchisee, meaning you have a franchise of, say, Holiday Inn Express, I'm assuming that's a franchise, that you don't have to worry about marketing. They're taking care of that. You pay them a certain amount of money so that you can be a Holiday Inn Express. They're doing the national ad campaigns. They're doing the marketing. They're running the social media. And when somebody calls a 1-800 number looking for the closest Holiday Inn Express, they're sending people to you. Okay, so there's some benefits there. The con is that it needs to look like a Holiday Inn Express. You can't paint it a different color. You can't organize it a different way. You can't have them wear different uniforms. So you have to roll with that because that's the way that franchising works. Remember to look at Avis Budget Group, and that's a neat example of how a hospitality company diversifies. So they not only do they have rental cars, but they also have their hands in hotels and airlines and et cetera, and they have relationships. And so they can use those relationships to advance their different brands. They can use all of their customers from Avis and push out promotions for Budget, and vice versa, and you know, some other areas of business that they have. Know that vacation ownership is timeshare. It's another word. It's a prettier word because timeshares, they don't sound too positive anymore. But vacation ownership, there's a whole section on that. And I still recommend The Queen of Versailles as a documentary, which gets into the vacation ownership business. Moving on, management contracts. A good example is the Four Seasons. So the idea here is that you have one entity that builds a structure. It's a spec, meaning they follow the specifications of the Four Seasons. But that entity owns the facility. But then they enter into a management contract to run that facility. So it's a management contract with the Four Seasons. They're entering into contract with the Four Seasons to manage the property. So they will hire, train, manage, lead, etc. that facility in terms of all the guests coming in, taking care of the guests. And at the end of the year, Four Seasons will get 2, 3, 4, 5% of the net profits from that location. That is their thank you for running the place well. So that section talks about management contracts. We talked about diversification. Know the diamond ratings, what goes into those diamond ratings. Sustainable lodging, there's a good section on that. Know greenwashing. What is greenwashing? Greenwashing is when a hospitality related business says that they're good for the environment, but they're actually not. They just say it because it sounds good, and it gets them some guests who are looking for that. It's PR, it's spin, okay? Greenwashing is when you say, oh yeah, we have solar panels on the roof so that we can channel that and powers our restaurant. You know, there's no solar panels on the roof. It's fluff. And there's a big difference between really being eco-friendly and not being eco-friendly at all. Some places, you know they're eco-friendly. Okay, everything about them screams that they're eco-friendly, and they believe in being sustainable, meaning they may recycle their water, or they may not allow water bottles, or they may reuse energy some way, somehow. They may use biodiesel to run part of their operation. Those are all things that you can do to be better to the earth, okay? But when they lie about it, essentially, that's greenwashing. Roles within a hotel, who does what? Just look through the different chapters. In each section, they talk about the types of positions that work in hotels. And as I said previously with one of the earlier chapters, know the kind of positions that could lead to being a GM. I mean, some of you want to be owners of places. There are steps that you should take to get there. Rack rate, that's the sticker price for a hotel. Look at page 104. They talk about the different rates. And then there's a bunch of categories that if you are AAA, AARP, federal government, friends and family, those are all lower prices. So you don't have to always pay rack rate, but that's what they will advertise. That's what they will tell people that are walking in. Also be familiar with PMS, which is property management system. It's the equivalent of POS in a restaurant. Make sure you look up RevPAR, ROP. And then some of the trends are on page 124. Hotels becoming more eco-friendly, more sustainable. We are executing with more technology, meaning we are implementing more technology into the daily of what we do. One of the trends, which may not be listed on there, is making it more of a homey environment based on the impact of Airbnb. So that's something to keep in mind. Chapter 6, it's all about cruises. Biggest thing to remember is that a cruise ship is a floating hotel or resort. Okay, that's the only major difference. And you're going to cool destinations, but it's essentially a hotel. Okay, it's and some of them have some amazing amenities. You have ice skating rinks, you have climbing walls, you have dance clubs, etc. The one and only cruise ship I was on had a Johnny Rockets on board. All you do is eat. What are the things that aren't included in your fee or your amount that you pay to go on a cruise ship? Usually it's fees, gratuity, and alcohol. And so those are things to consider. But cruises right now, I think they're more affordable than ever because they've had so many problems. There is, and it's a little bit lower on your list, but there is a company that is planning to build the Titanic 2. Just Google that, you'll see it. You obviously know about Titanic 1, which was almost, I guess, over 100 years ago when it sank. But as a result of Titanic 1, we increased significantly our security measures, our expectations for lifeboats, life rafts, all types of safety measures, radar, etc. So when you watch maybe one of the videos about Titanic 2, you will hear them say, we're going to have more life preservers, we're going to have more lifeboats, we have all this technology to make sure that kind of thing can never happen again. The potential benefit of a Titanic 2, or the one good aspect of calling it Titanic 2, is the fact that you'll get all this PR. Some people are going to be afraid to go on it, but some people are going to think it's just neat. And they are building it based on the old plans for the most part, so that you get that old world feeling. Future cruise industry, it really has a lot to do with being eco-friendly. It has a lot to do with becoming more sustainable. You're going to continue to have amenities that just blow your mind. on these different ships. I believe they're going to get bigger, but you're also going to have some specialization. You do have so many varieties of cruises out there: celebrity cruises, single cruises, family cruises, you name it. And so that industry is by no means slowing down. It's just becoming more and more interesting. Chapters 7 and 8, the two last chapters before we go into the other section. Be familiar with the types of restaurants that are out there, whether it's quick casual or fine dining. Quick service and fast food are essentially the same thing with McDonald's, Burger King, Wendy's. Fast casual is one step under, say, the casual would be Applebee's, would be TGI Fridays, Ruby Tuesdays, those kinds of places. Fast casual, which is right under that, is your Chipotle, Five Guys, Shake Shack brands. Okay, so you know the differences and realize what makes them different. You have fast food and then you have fast casual. The difference is quality, pricing, environment. You have fast casual and then you have casual. Fast casual, if you're talking about Chipotle, you are bussing your own table. You're going up, you get your food, you leave, or they call you. You know, Applebee's, they're coming to your table, they're serving you. It's a little bit different environment. Okay. Independents versus franchises or groups. An independent, they're by themselves. You know, they do their ordering. They're not getting great pricing because they're only ordering for one restaurant. If you are a franchise or part of a group, you have more leverage. That vendor is going to give you better pricing. You're going to have better training if you're a group or a franchise because they've been doing it for longer, or they've been doing it on such a massive scale that they've tweaked it to a point where they're more successful. Independents, it's tough to do. You don't have a big team most of the time. And so you depend on hiring really good people, and a lot of them are getting their experience at the chains and at the groups and through the franchises. Food costing. We did an exercise in one of the classes to do the breakdown of a menu. So if you're going to make an omelet, for instance, or you're going to make a burger, what is your pricing? You know, you buy lettuce and tomato and cheese and burger and bun, etc. What does it cost for all of those pieces? And you put it together. Maybe all of the pieces, all of the recipe that makes that burger, when you buy it wholesale, will come out to $2, which means that you'll probably sell that burger for 6, 7, or 8. You can either multiply that by 3 or by 4, because the reality is, you may, if it's a $10 burger for the customer and it costs you $2 to make the burger, that's great, but you're not making $8 profit. That $8 goes to pay for marketing and pays for overhead, which is your lease, or it may be labor, it may be uniforms, it may be so many other things that you have to pay for. And at the end of the day, you get this much profit, net profit. It's tough. We work on very small margins in the hospitality industry all over the board, and especially in the restaurants. Be familiar with front of the house, back of the house, FIFO, first in, first out. The idea of forecasting, meaning this time last year we had X number of sales, we had this going on in our place. You want to be able to forecast, to plan in advance for certain times a year when you're going to get slammed with customers or it's just going to be dead. During the marathon, you know that you're going to be slammed. Whether you're a hotel or a restaurant, everybody gets slammed, or they should. So you got to make sure that that is consistent. You always want to be ahead of where you were last year. And you want to make sure that you forecast effectively, because that means that you are planning for your staffing effectively. And you know that, hey, this is going to be a slow time, so we're not going to have 7 waiters on that shift. We're only going to have 5. And you just have to anticipate those things. And you're always paying attention. You should always be paying attention to weather, to special events, to all types of things that are going on around you, because they are going to impact that forecasting. Standardized recipes, super important. If you're at TGI Fridays in New York City, if you're at TGI Fridays in Terre Haute, Indiana, if you're at TGI Fridays in Sonoma County, California, the bruschetta should taste the same. The chicken bruschetta, pasta dish, whatever it is, should taste the same because you're following very specific recipes consistently, whether it's one chef or another, one cook or another. No matter where they are, you want to be consistent because that means you're using the same amount of this and the same amount of that, which is creating that dish with those portions. And that is important to keep a real good handle on the money. There's a lot of restaurants that falter in this area, and a lot of restaurants do fail because they can't manage their food costing. It's super important. And lastly, when we talk about eco-friendly restaurants, there's so many things that you can do to be more eco-friendly. A lot of it is managing your waste, managing your, and this time I am talking about food, your perishability of food, stuff that spoils, stuff that goes rotten. You have to be really, really, really on top of all that from an eco-friendly perspective because you don't want to waste. But it's also the chemicals that you use. It's also your commitment to either using bottled water or not. It's all of these things that impact the environment that you don't necessarily think about. So it's important to take a step back and look at your entire operation and see where you can be more eco-friendly. And sometimes it's using old equipment instead of buying new stuff. It's great to take out something out of an old restaurant and use it in your place. Why do you have to buy new? Of course, the big brands, they'd rather you buy new because then they make money. But instead of that thing going into a landfill, if it's still got some life on it, put it in your place. You know, if you can take the wood off of an old barn and use it to redecorate or reconceptualize the interior of your restaurant, why not? Or the lobby of your hotel, whatever. You know, there's a way to be more eco-friendly. So that's the chapters. The other, under promise and over deliver. The idea is to find ways to exceed expectations. So under promise means to not over promise. To over deliver is to exceed expectations. So people come into your restaurant, you find out that they're celebrating a graduation, send them a bottle of champagne. They didn't expect it. They just knew that they're going to come in and get a good meal at a nice place. When you delivered the bottle of champagne, you exceeded their expectation. Okay, that's the over deliver. In a hotel, they expect a nice room at a fair price, decent Wi-Fi, enough channels to watch on TV, etc. But when they check in, they upgrade you, or they leave you a note in your room with a chocolate bar, or they comp you a faster Wi-Fi speed. You know, there's all these little things that we can do that don't cost really that much or anything at all. It's just the effort, and that's that exceeding expectations. And that contributes to the lifetime value of a customer, meaning if you're good to them, they're going to keep visiting you. And you don't just do that for the customers that are whales or that spend a lot of money in your place, because Lucy, who comes into your coffee shop once a week, every week, and spends $5, if you're good to her, she's going to come forever. And she's going to tell her friends that this is the coffee shop to go to. Okay, so it's about money and about PR. One of the biggest mistakes we make is that we spend a lot of money getting new customers when we should be spending more money keeping the customers we have. Give them a little nibble of a brownie when they come into your coffee shop. When they're in your restaurant and they're short $1, let them slide. They will remember you for that, okay? You want to invest in that lifetime value of a customer. Even if it's this much that they spend each week, if it's for 10 years, that's a lot of money that you can count on. And you can't put a dollar amount on the PR that they bring your way. The hardest thing is your staff needs to understand that, because they don't get that. They only see the here and now most of the time. So you have to train them to understand that it's not about the sprint, it's about the marathon. Okay, it's not about right here. It's about what that person represents. And they'll talk. Okay. CRM, customer relationship management, which was referenced before. It's a system to manage data about customers. The biggest mistake is that we don't use this data. Okay, you have loyalty programs in restaurants where you collect emails and information about people, put it to work. If you collect the right information, if you do a good job of doing this, you know their birthday, their anniversary, their children's ages, etc. Then you can send them a little note 2 weeks before their birthday and say, hey, we hear you have a birthday coming up. We'd love to host you in our restaurant. And guess what? We'll keep a bottle of champagne on ice. Or you add a little something, and then when they get there, you over-deliver with that bottle of champagne. Okay? So these are the things that you want to do. Lastly, the Conrad Hilton story, and then we'll close. Conrad Hilton's story, he was originally a traveling salesman, and he used to always stop at this one motel in Texas and got to know the owner a little bit. And one day the owner confided in him and said, look, I'm getting tired of this business. I think I want to retire, move to Florida, something like that. He says, would you be interested in buying the motel? Conrad's like, I don't know. I'm, it's not my business. He said, well, think about it. Let me know. Conrad thought about it, ended up buying the motel, and he did some neat things. Two main things that I think are really important and relevant. One, he realized who his target audience was and who his clientele was. He realized that they're mainly traveling salesmen. And knowing that and being a traveling salesman himself, he realized, well, they don't need a room for 24 hours. So he broke it up into 3 segments, 8 hours, 8 hours, 8 hours. So you could rent a room for 8 hours, get a good night's sleep, shower, and be on your way. So by doing that, he brought the price down for the 8 hour slot, but then he was getting 3 times as much. So that increased his revenue big time. He would even sleep on the couch in the lobby so that he could rent out his own room and make money. And so he made a lot of money that way. The other way that he made a lot of money was he pioneered in the area of selling items in your lobby area. Toothbrushes and pens and briefcases and ties and batteries, etc. And guess he did pretty well considering he built an empire from that. And Paris should be very thankful. That being said, make sure to pay attention to the key terms at the end of each chapter. Read the highlights when you can. But these are the things that you want to focus on. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. I know this was long. You can go back and see it again if you need to. But wish you luck on your midterm. Thank you. Good night.